Searched everywhere. I looked through hundreds of files, searched through my text messages. I even looked everywhere in my wardrobe, but I just couldn't find where I asked for your opinion.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Dear Qadriyyah Safiyyah, where I scour the internet and I look for situations where I can offer my unsolicited opinion and advice. Today's episode, just like yesterday's, also comes from The Defender, which is a Black publication. And the advice columnist was Princess Mysteria, and she published with them from 1921 to 1930. So let's read the letter for today. This letter is dated February 9th, 1924. Okay? Dear Qadriyyah Safiyyah, I am in distress. I have been keeping company with a young man for a year, okay? About a month ago, he questioned me as to my past life. Okay, this sounds like he's asking you about the number of men you've had relations with. I told him I have always been a good girl. Ugh, the language is so triggering. I have always been a girl, which I have. Only when I was about 8 years old, I was the victim of something I was not responsible for. Ugh. I did not tell him this, no. As to no one knows about this but my parents. Right. If I should become his wife, is there any way he could find this out? Your parents could tell him. He has hinted marriage several times, but has not asked me outright. Okay. All right. He is an exceptionally good boy, from what you know, and is very particular. Particular. That sounds like he's anal. I am so afraid he would later find this out. Signed, Distress. So it sounds like you have no plans on telling him, which I fully support. I fully support that you do not. I don't know if it is. So it sounds like in your mind he is such a good person and he's so particular that if he found out that you were molested, that his opinion of you would lessen. So that is disappointing. And it also sounds like, well, it definitely sounds like you need therapy, first and foremost. Even in 1924, it sounds like you need therapy. And I don't know what the therapy situations are from the 1924s, the 1920s, but for a Black woman, I'm not assured that you will be supported in your confession of being molested, and that the guidance that you would receive from a licensed therapist in the 20s would be helpful to your emotional wellness. So I would suggest, instead of going to a licensed therapist in the 1920s, that you seek out maybe a medicine man that would help you gain a perspective that would be beneficial to you, right? Because I feel like in the 20s, the position and opinion about women being molested wasn't, for some reason it feels like they still considered it somehow your fault. Let me just put it like that. I don't know if, I don't think that it is obligatory to divulge that information to someone who is not your husband. That's the truth. Because you may divulge that information, he may then decide not to marry you, and now here's another person who has this information about you when you don't feel healed and you don't feel whole. And that leaves you vulnerable, which I do not suggest, especially in the 1920s, to increase your vulnerability as a woman. I do think that if he does decide to marry you and you do get married, I think it is, if you feel like your husband can be understanding, can be supportive, can be loving, can be encouraging in terms of your healing journey, then I would suggest that you share with him what happened to you when you were 8. If you do not feel that way, the other side of this coin is that you are knowingly keeping something from him that you feel is a secret. And the reality is, it's not a secret. He asked you about your past life, which typically includes your voluntary behavior, because that seems to be what he's wondering. If you are voluntarily out here in these 1924 streets being, unchaste. I'll say that. I'll say unchaste. It doesn't seem like the question encompasses, have you ever been molested? Or have you ever been raped? Right? That doesn't seem like that's what the question is. I could definitely be wrong. I could totally be wrong. Maybe in the 1924, when they're asking about your sexual history, they want to know if you were molested or if you were raped. That doesn't seem like that doesn't seem like that's something that people typically are asking when they're asking about whom else you've slept with, right? So I would say, if you never want to tell your husband, if he becomes your husband, let's say you get married to this exceptionally good boy who is very particular, and you never want to tell him this, then that is a conversation to have with your parents. If your parents are the only one, well, they're not the only one. The person who molested you knows. The person who molested you knows. But as far as you know, it's just you, your parents, and the person who molested you. That's as far as you know. The truth is, the person who molested you could have told somebody else, because, that person may have no shame, right? That person could be a drunkard, or that person could have had a deathbed confession. We don't know. There are so many ways, right? Also, you don't know who your parents told. To be honest with you, your mother, this may have weighed on your mother, and she may have confided in someone else. This may have weighed on your father, and he may have confided in someone else. Best case scenario, your father told somebody else, and they both went and, murdered the person who molested you. The truth of the matter is, you don't know who else knows, right? And if you're living in fear that your husband would find out from someone other than you, then I highly suggest that as soon as you have developed a level of, I guess, comfort, that you tell him so that you can get that off of you and not feel that you have burdened yourself with something that happened to you that wasn't your responsibility, right? And I hope your husband does offer you compassion in that conversation. I hope your husband offers compassion. And if you find that your husband does not have that level of compassion, or if you find that before you get married, he's not that kind of compassionate person, him being an exceptional person does not necessarily mean he is a good fit for you. What you are looking for in a husband is more than, I guess, it's more than who he is by himself. You're looking for someone who is a companion to you, and a exceptionally good companion to someone who was molested is someone who has a understanding that the person who was molested is deserving of compassion and understanding and love and support. And that is the particular way that your husband needs to be. This person might not be the person for you. If you are fearful of talking to him about, and not even talking to him, like it sounds like you don't even want to make the statement, I was molested when I was 8. That is not even a full-fledged conversation. That's just the facts. So it's not, if it is causing you distress before you are even engaged, then know that just as you have attracted this exceptionally good boy, there are more exceptionally wonderful men who would never ask you about your past life, because it has nothing to do with him, as long as, well, not even, I mean, as long as who you are today and who you are tomorrow isn't contingent upon what you have done or what has happened to you, then that is really none of his business. But if you bring into your present and into your future the choices you made then and things that have happened to you in your past, then it does affect him. It does affect him. So you may consider that this angst, and sometimes the angst we have about other people's responses are not as well-founded as we think. So I would suggest that you take the time to get to know him in a sense where you can decide if you can trust him with this very personal situation that happened to you. And if you can't trust him, then I would move forward with keeping his company, and if he proposes, being engaged and then being married. But if you cannot trust him, there's so many other things that happen in life that are much like this situation, where it may not be your responsibility, but it does become a part of your life. And if your husband is stoic in his peculiarity or his particular nature, then you will be full of distress. And if that is not what you're looking for in marriage, then I would say keep looking. Keep looking. And do some healing work on yourself, so that when you look and you find someone and you are healing whole, you will find someone who is healing whole. Okay? Much success to us all.